tons 25, 4 tons 30, which is why I say it's a typically European launch. As I said, this campaign has gone quite well and quite smoothly. A launcher campaign lasts 27 days, and we're in an Ariane 44L configuration. That's the biggest Ariane, like I said. The campaign was satisfactory from beginning to end without any major problems, as we like to say here.
The three stages of the launch vehicle arrived in Kourou by ship at the end of June. Inside the launch vehicle integration building, the erection of the first stage took place on the 2nd of July. The meeting of the second stage took place on the 3rd of July. The third stage was erected on July 10. Then the vehicle equipment bay with all the electronics equipment was located on top of the third stage. On the 23rd of July, the transfer of the launch vehicle for the integration building to the launch pad area. The distance of 1 kilometer has been covered in 30 minutes. Cryogenic arms have been connected to the third stage before the gantry is put back in place. The upper part, the fairing with the spacecraft inside, has been put in place on top of the launch vehicle on the 31st of July.
The gantry which covers the launcher is removed very late in the final countdown. These are pictures that were shot about 5 hours ago. It's one of the last major operations before launch.
Yes, definitely this afternoon around 2 p.m. So we still have everything green. It seems that the countdown is going on well.
Arianespace DG Francis Avanzi. While watching, we had a 10-minute weather check. We seem to be okay with the weather, which is a good thing because we're off on a guided tour of the weather station. This is the weather operations room. The red or the green status panel indication for the weather is first put up in here, depending on the weather conditions, which will either let us launch or not. We have two types of equipment. We have a group of monitoring systems which let us watch the atmosphere using human eyes, weather satellites, weather radar, which detects rain, and systems that detect lightning. We also have a group of measuring devices which detail the state of the atmosphere, now using balloons which carry radio soundings, and eventually for Ariane 5 using weather rockets. Finally, since the launcher flies over the ocean, we monitor non-stop the characteristics of the wind on the beaches and transmit these numbers continuously to the safety people, who can make the decision to delay a launch based on the atmospheric conditions. We're still all green here, all green and go. We mentioned complex CSG range here, and where there are many people that work at different sites. We're going to go up to one of those sites again, the launch base, and take a look at what Gaston and his crew are doing up there. They're 14 kilometers from where we are. They're much closer to the pad. They're a kilometer from the pad. They're inside a blockhouse with walls a meter thick. They're doing what, their final checks now and final filling operations?
No, yes, they are doing the final checks. You see here the cryotechnic arms, which are needed to load the third stage. The loading of the third stage, you see here in the sketch on the right side the hydrogen arms, and on the left side the oxygen arms. The loading of the stage started this afternoon, 2 hours after the gantry retrieval, and it just will be finished 5 minutes before liftoff.
That shot, by the way, is the last you're going to see before liftoff because those arms are going to swing open,
yeah,
which will let Ariane leave the pad. Coming up on 6 minutes now, you should hear the DDO. Calling out something called automatic sequence.
Yes, now we are going inside the so-called automatic sequence, which starts 6 minutes before liftoff, and it's an automatic sequence which is taken over only by 2 computers located in the CDL, the operation center there.
Now these computers are checking out all the 1,000,001 things essential to the mission and to its safety.
Yeah, mainly one computer is checking everything which is related to the engine parameters, and the other one is checking everything which is related to the electrical systems and so on. And also during this final sequence there are also other major operations which are the configuration of the launcher and of the spacecraft of the flight.
We're coming down to liftoff now in under 5 minutes, a short 5 minutes away, and we're starting to get some of the reports of the final operations before Ariane sets off on her mission. At -5 minutes, we had confirmation of stopping the third stage topping up. Now, they're stopping filling the third stage only 5 minutes before we take off.
Yes.
-4 minutes and 30 seconds. They're reporting introduction of the launch time into the onboard computer. They do that now?
Yes, they do that now. There's no reason to charge the memory of the launch vehicle so early, and this is one of the last operation.
So there's a lot of things that they save for 4 or 5 minutes before lift. Things that can't be put in the computer or can't be done.
No. It's only that you put the launcher and the spacecraft in the flight configuration at the very last moment.
Is that to preserve something?
Yeah.
Batteries or memory?
Yes, of course. Up to now, the launcher is still connected, for instance, as power supply with the ground system. But from now on, it's connected with its own batteries, its own power supply.
So we're passing from...
It's passing from the ground configuration connection to the flight configuration. And so the spacecraft too.
The spacecraft that are...
The spacecraft inside the fairing, they're switching to the flight configurations also.
Good, right. As you just said, at -3 minutes and 30 seconds, the satellites go on to launch configuration, which means their batteries are turned on or they're charged up or what?
Batteries are turned on, the software starts, I would say, running in order to say to the spacecraft that it will lead all alone.
Now, what happens if we find some anomaly and somebody throws a red up on the green status panels now during the final sequence?
Yes, if there is some parameters which makes turn to the red, the green panel, then we have to stop the synchronized sequence and to restart it again from 6 minutes.
The center of your screen is Pierre Ramat, who is the mission director for Telecoms. He has launched all 7 in the series, the 3 Telecom 1s and the 4 Telecom 2s, as has Ariane, by the way. Let's talk about the cryogenic arms now again, because we're coming down to when we're going to see them opening. Now, the computers that you were talking about that were checking the electrics and the fluids, these same computers are going to give the orders to start the engines when we get down to point 0. Right?
Yes. But before the point 0, 5 seconds before the point 0, you will see the 2 cryogenic arms leave the launcher. At this point in time, the launcher will be all alone on the table, and at age 0 time, the valves of the 4 main engines of the first stage, they will be opened, so the ignition of the engines will take place.
So explain the launch sequence briefly. You have the arms open, and then the computer says start the engines, and then the computer checks out the engines, and then the computer says go.
Yes, the launcher will not lift off exactly at age 0 time, because for 4.2 seconds the computers will check all the parameters of the engines, and only when these check has been done, then the hook will release the launcher at 4.4 seconds after the H0 time. The launcher will physically lift off.
So we don't have ignition and liftoff right away.
No, no.
À tous DDO, attention pour H0 moins 1 minute.
DDO has said he's going to call out the 1 minute mark.
Top, H0 moins 1 minute.
All right, we're down to the final 60 seconds before liftoff. And coming down to the wire and all eyes forward on the green status panels, which continue to tell the story. Everything is go and green for beginning of this Ariane mission number 90. We're going to slip away for a minute and let you watch the last 30 seconds by yourselves, and we'll be back once Ariane has cleared the tower, and we'll go into positive time until satellite separation.
À tous DDO, attention pour les décomptes finales. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, top. Allumage. Tous les paramètres sont normaux, décollage.
Some beautiful shots of the launcher rising into the night sky. You can see there are 8 points of light there. There are 4 for the main engines and 4 for the boosters. Here's our infrared camera tracking, our heat camera tracking the launcher.
This is great, Joshua. The first event will be the release of the 4 liquid booster. Will take place about 2 minutes after liftoff.
Together, all these engines are burning how much fuel per second? Over 2 tons.
Yes, there are 220 tons of propellant in the first stage, and it's burning 1,000 kilograms
Tous
per
les paramètres
second.
bord sont normaux.
Can you imagine?
DDO has just said everything is
Trajectoire est
normal.
normale.
Trajectory is normal. Do you want to take a look at this curve here and tell us what we're seeing on the right-hand side with T and moyenne?
Yes, T is the time, moyenne is the ground station who's tracking, as is the inclination of the launcher, A is the actual altitude, and V is the actual velocity. On the left side, you have a sketch of the altitude in relation with the distance.
Tous les paramètres propulsifs sont normaux. La trajectoire est normale.
Everything normal, says the DDO. We're doing fine. You can see the on the curve on the left side, you see the cursor climbing up there on the blue curve towards what is written there, SEP 1-2. That's separation of the first and second stage. Ariane rises for the first, I think, 10 or 11 seconds, and then
We should have now sorry, Joshua. We should have now the release of the liquid boosters.
they burn. They're dropped after 2 seconds after burnout.
Extinction des 4 propulseurs d'appoint liquide. Tous les paramètres bord sont normaux.
DDO has said that the 4 liquid boosters have just burned out. Everything is normal.
Séparation des 4 propulseurs liquides.
Now they have been jettisoned, so they will fall back into the drink, I imagine, huh?
Yes.
Tous les paramètres bord sont normaux.
First stage is going to burn for about 3.5 minutes.
Yes, it should shut down in about half a minute when the onboard computer detects half thrust decay due to the approaching depletion of the loading propellant.
This happens for every stage separation? The
No.
onboard
This
computers-
happens particularly only for the first stage. We'll see after for the other
Tous les
stage.
paramètres bord sont normaux. Trajectoire est nominale.
Trajectory and propulsion, everything normal, says the DDO. We're coming up on first and second stage separation now.
Extinction du premier étage.
First stage burnout.
Séparation premier étage et du deuxième étage.
and separation
Allumage du deuxième étage.
of the
Tous les
stages.
paramètres propulsifs sont normaux.
And the second stage has begun to burn now. That will burn its single Viking 6 engine.
Yes. It has 33 tons of propellant, which will be burned in about 2 minutes. So it means 250 kilograms per second.
Coming up to Sep Quaff, you can see the cursor, that's separation of the quaff, that's the fairing. That's due to come up in just about a minute's time. Give you an idea of how much Ariane weighs and how much mass that she loses after every stage is
Tous les
dropped.
paramètres bord sont normaux.
Everything is normal, he says. Total mass at ignition, 481 tons, you recall. Mass after first stage separation, we're down to 58 tons. So we've lost a lot, and mainly in fuel.
Yes.
Largage de la coiffe.
Oh, there goes the fairing, which has been jettisoned. The nose fairing, you recall, is the salt shaker shape thing that keeps the payload in, I guess, a clean room environment.
Yes. But now you can see the altitude is 127 kilometers, so the atmosphere is quite far, and the spacecraft in upper position can withstand the aerothermal flux. So the fairing is jettisoned in order to save mass.
Save that. How much does it weigh?
The weight is around 800 kilograms.
Tous les paramètres bord sont normaux. La trajectoire est nominale.
Ariane now moving at a speed of just under 5 kilometers per second. That's just about half her maximum speed.
Yeah.
That she'll be getting at the end of the third stage burn, which we need for satellite injection. So we are getting there slowly but surely. Now the stage separation, the first and second stages after burnout, I'm told they're sort of opened up like sardine cans, and then when they drop in the sea,
Yeah.
the water fills up in their empty tanks so that there's no fuel left over, so that they don't start any combustion, right? And then they sink to the bottom, is that?
Yes. Shutdown of the
Extinction
second
du
stage.
deuxième étage.
Second stage burnout.
Séparation du deuxième étage et du troisième étage.
Separation of second and third stage.
Allumage du troisième étage. Tous les paramètres bord sont normaux.
Third stage now has begun to
So-
burn. This is the long burn, about a 12-minute burn. We're burning how many? 10 tons of cryogenic fuel?
Yes, about 11 tons of cryogenic fuel will be burned in around 780 seconds. It means more or less 15 kilograms per second. And this is a long flight around of the third stage. It has to reach the injection orbit and injection velocity, which is about 10 kilometers per second. Now, launcher is actually flying at
Acquisition du
5.
lanceur par la station des Natales.
Didio has just said we've been picked up by the first downrange station, which is called Natal. You have a picture of that coming up in just a minute. There you are. Natal is just over the border in Brazil. An agreement with the government there allows us to use these facilities. There's some additional ESA equipment which has been installed there. I'm curious about this third stage burn. Why is it so long? Because it has to drive the launcher all the way across the ocean?
No, because all he has to reach the required velocity that, as I said, is around 10 kilometers per second. Its thrust is not so great as the first and second stage, so he has to push, and to accelerate.
Tous les paramètres
We'll
bord
see
sont
afterwards
normaux.
that, in fact, he has to reach a culmination altitude, and then we will see that he will accelerate, going toward the Earth, taking advantage of the gravitation. We'll see this after. One thing that I wanted to say here is that at this point in time, since the second stage flight, the launcher is piloting itself. The onboard computer is in charge of the pilot and the guidance. He knows its actual position and velocity. He knows which is the point in space where he has to go. So he computes which is the minimum path to go there in order to minimize the propellant consumption. Propellant consumption means more payload, more spacecraft mass. Here is Paolo Ciccolini, is representative of Italian Space Agency for the Italsat.
Tous les paramètres bord sont normaux. La trajectoire est normale.
We are normal. Getting back to our mass profile, you remember after the first stage separation, we were down to 58 tons, down from 481 at liftoff. After the second stage separation, we dropped to 18 tons. And third stage propellant, we mentioned, is 11 tons tonight.
So coming to this and what I said before, it's interesting to say that at the very end of the flight and injection, if we look at the percentage of the mass which is really injected, it represents more or less 1%.
1%.
1% of the initial lift-off mass.
We're coming up on our second downrange station, which is at Ascension Island out in the middle of the Atlantic. They should be picking up the signal any minute. After they do, we'll say a few words about Italsat, huh? Because we have some time. 6.2 kilometers per second. We are at 226 kilometers above the Earth.
So,
and all is going well.
Perte normale du lanceur par la station du Gourou.
We've just lost the quite normal to lose the signal, the tracking signal from the Kourou tracking station now. So we're being followed by Natal in Brazil and in a minute be picked up by Ascension Island.
During the flights, the visibility is always assured. There is no 1 second which is not covered by a ground station. So we are now approaching the maneuver that I said before. The launcher will start to pitch, going toward the Earth, taking advantage of the gravitation of the Earth in order to accelerate. And then at the last moment it will go up, and it will reach the 10 kilometers per second. 10 kilometers per second means, you know,
faster than a speeding bullet.
Yes, 30,000 kilometers per hour. You can compare it with your speed by car, and you see that it's quite a speed.
Across the Atlantic in 15 minutes.
Yes, exactly.
You see on the curve the cursor is going on the line towards X to H10. H10 is the third stage. That'll be the
Tous les paramètres à bord sont normaux. Et encore 500 secondes de propulsion.
500 seconds left of propulsion in the third stage, says the DDO. That X to H10 will be the moment when the third stage will shut down. Take a moment now. We have some time to talk about Italsat, huh? This is Italy's biggest space program to date, right?
Yes. This is the second spacecraft, and up to now it will land the Italsat F1 and F2 program.
Italsat 1 was launched, as we mentioned, in January of '91. On flight 41. It's the nation's domestic communication system developed and managed by the Italian space agency ASI. Italsat 2, like the first one, has several payloads. We mentioned the global payload, the multi-beam payload, but I think the star payload and the new thing is the EMS, which is for mobiles, European Mobile Services.
Yes.
And that's made a big difference in the size of Italsat 2. The payload was developed by ESA, with 40% funding from the agency, the Italian agency. And the project intends to serve the promising European market for telecoms, especially mobiles. It'll provide direct communications between fixed and mobile ground stations, working in L-band and KU-band, serving anybody with mobile phones.
Mr. Avanzi, General Director of Aerospace,
La trajectoire est normale.
Looking at the flight, as everyone here, the DDOs just said everything is fine.
The telecommunication capacity of EMS is interesting, will be marketed by Nuovo Telespazio, which is a subsidiary of...
Yes, of Group STET.
And their market studies estimate that Europe's mobile phone market will hit 100,000 users by 2000 and be a market worth $1 billion AQ, that's $1 billion US dollars.
Acquisition du lanceur par la station de télémesure d'Ascension.
By 2005. Now the DDO said we've been picked up by the Ascension site. ESA station it is, built in 1991 when NASA was about to close its support station there. That's out in the middle of the Atlantic.
Just one thing about the flight, Joshua. If you look at the right side of the screen, you can see that the altitude is decreasing.
And you can see on the curve there that it
yes,
looks
it's
like
going
it's
down.
dipping.
But this,
normal.
It's normal because you are increasing your speed, and that's what we want.
Just a couple of new things on Italsat. They're flying the old F1 antenna, but it's been upgraded to transmit in both the Ka and the L band. F1 had only Ka band capacity, but F2 has a dual frequency antenna. The platform upgrade also included more power, propulsion, heat control, all for EMS, which made the satellite 200 kilos heavier than F1.
Fin de visibilité du lanceur par la station de Natal.
So Natal Station, he says, has just lost the signal, which is normal. We're being followed by Ascension Island now. New fuel tanks were added to support the spacecraft. But the real innovation in the series, if I can say, this goes back to F1, is its ability aboard the spacecraft to...
Tous les paramètres à bord sont normaux. Il reste 6 minutes à pousser.
6 minutes left of propulsion for the third stage. Aboard the spacecraft, as I was saying, to recreate the digital signal instead of amplifying it and sending it back to the ground, along with the noise and distortion, which is the system that's been used up until F1, right?
Yeah. So Joshua, looking at the flight, altitude still decreasing, but velocity is still increasing. And the launcher is now approaching the coast of Africa. And everything seems to be fine.
We'll be picked up in a couple of minutes by Libreville. That's the very last tracking station on the west coast of Africa in Gabon. And the two satellites will be released, will be separated over the coast of Africa. Italsat more to the west and France Telecom more towards the interior. Tonight we have what they call a non-standard injection orbit, Marcello?
Yes, here is Franco Marconicchio, mission director for Italsat.
He was here for F1. Also, he was mission director at that time. His 10th time in French Guiana. I started to say we have what they call a non-standard injection orbit, an inclination of 5.5 degrees instead of 7. What's that all about?
Yes, instead of 7. Well, when the launcher has the possibility to carry on more performance of the total payload, we can decide to decrease the inclination in order to make the spacecraft save fuel for its own lifetime. Because at the final position, the spacecraft, they have to be reached inclination near to 0. So if we put them an inclination which is closer to 0, it's better for them.
Franco Marconicchio, who you just saw, told us earlier in the week that F1 was designed for 5 years, but then ASI decided to go to 6 years. But at its launch, Ariane, he says, was so good at putting it into its orbital injection that they needed a minimum amount of propellant to get it where it wanted to go, which saved a lot of fuel. And he says it's going to go for another couple of years.
Yeah. Here is Pierre Amat, which is who is mission director for Telecom 2D. He has been also
Tous les paramètres à bord sont normaux. La trajectoire est
several
nominale.
times.
He has 30 years in the aerospace business. He's launched all the telecoms. 25 times, I think he said, in French Guiana.
So now launcher is start to increasing the altitude. Velocity is 8.7 kilometers per second.
And we need to get to 10 kilometers per second.
Yeah.
We have a couple of more minutes. The Telecom 2D, which is the 7th in the series, the Telecom 1A, 1B, and C were launched. We mentioned the first one, 1A, goes back to August of '84. Telecom 1B in May of '85 and 1C in March of '88. All 1.2 tons, all built by Matra, all launched on Ariane 3s, which are no longer in service since its capacity was 2.7 tons. For the Telecom 2 series, we had, for the first time in French space industry history, we had a co-prime with Matra and Alcatel. 2A was launched in
Acquisition du lanceur par la station de télémesure Libreville.
All right, we've been picked up by Libreville, the station I mentioned on the west coast of Africa. That's the last station that's going to track the launcher. 2A launched
Tous les paramètres à bord sont normaux. Il reste 1 minute de propulsion.
1 minute of gas left in the third stage, he says. The telecoms all weigh 2.2...
No, 1 minute of thrust.
The Telecom 2 series all weigh about 2.2, 2.3 tons. The 7 satellites together in the series total 62 years of service. The Syracuse payload, the Army payload, if you're interested, an 8 billion franc program. It's one of the French Army's biggest. And they've designed a group of 100 new ground stations for the Telecom 2 series, just for that, the smallest aboard the French
Tous les
nuclear
paramètres à bord sont
satellites.
normaux.
So now, Joshua, we are approaching the injection in orbit. We are approaching the injection velocity.
And the extinction of the third.
And it's time to shut down the main engine of the third stage.
Fin de propulsion du troisième étage.
And there it is, third stage extinction.
There it is, now the
Now
third
what's
stage.
happening? We have, we're coming up towards separation of the first satellite.
Yes,
But
yes.
we have no more where we're not going forward anymore.
No, the engine is not pushing anymore, but the third stage is activating very, very low thrusters at the very bottom of the composite. This means that it starts to orientate the composite to separate the spacecraft in the appropriate direction. For instance, Italsat has to be separated toward the sun direction. And this means that the composite must know where to go, has to go.
Mass after the end of the third stage propulsion, we're down to 6.8 tons. You remember where we started at 481.
Tous les paramètres à bord sont normaux.
So everything is going fine. In 1 minute we should have separation of the first spacecraft.
Début de mise en rotation du composite. Séparation Italsat.
There we are. Italsat has been separated. So that's the first good news.
But it's not finished because the first stage must orientate.
We have another satellite, and we have in between the two separations, we have some maneuvers, don't we?
Yes, we have to do another maneuvers because we have to separate the upper part of the spelda. The spelda is a structure which contains the second spacecraft, so we have to release this part in order to clear the Telecom spacecraft.
All right, now that Italsat is released, I'll give you the first transfer orbit operations. The first acquisition will be about 29 minutes after liftoff. That's in Malindi in Kenya. Second acquisition at Perth, Australia, 43 minutes after liftoff. Solar panel deployment about 2 hours and 20 minutes after liftoff. First apogee motor ignition, 37 hours at the fourth apogee, a 40-minute burn. The second and last motor burn at the seventh apogee. Solar panels will come out about 85 hours after liftoff, and then the antennas will be deployed about 100 hours more or less after liftoff, and then she'll drift over to 16.4. All these operations, which last for about 7 days, which is, I think, normal for telecom sets, to be used by the ESA, thanks to the ESA network. All LEO and NSO near synchronous orbit phase operations at the ESOC station in Darmstadt. And once F2 is commissioned, it'll be given over to Telecom Italia, who is ASI's customer, right?
Yeah.
But the satellite is going to remain ASI property.
Yes. We're approaching now the separation of the spelda.
Now, what's the spelda?
Spelda is a carrying structure.
Séparation de la mini-spelda.
There it goes. Just been separated.
Yes.
Now, why do they have to separate that before they can separate the second satellite?
Of course. Now we have another couple of minutes before separation of Telecom. So you have to think that this sequence, which takes place in orbit, is a critical sequence because, of course, all the spacecraft must be separated safely in orbit, but also because at this point in time, the different objects, the first spacecraft, the third stage, the upper spelda, and the second spacecraft, they will be in the space of few hundreds of meters.
Okay, the Italsat people now, who is he talking to, do you imagine? Is he talking to Rome? Is he talking to a satellite ground crew?
Well, I think that now he's talking to the people connected with the ESO ground station for the link, to connect to the link to the spacecraft.
Franco Marco Nicchio is going to Darmstadt for the apogee motor firings.
Yes.
He told us, so he's leaving Kourou tonight or tomorrow.
Yeah. So another minute before separation of Telecom. The third stage is still orientating itself for the final separation.
Because the two satellites are going in different directions, obviously.
Yes, two satellites are going different direction. Spelda is going in another direction, and then finally also the third stage has to go in another direction. So,
talking about four elements.
Yes, 4 elements in space, and I said before, just in a space of few hundreds meters. Okay, so this is quite interesting and critical phase.
Coming up on plus 24 minutes after
L'orientation du composite se poursuit normalement.
the orientation of the composite, the DDO has said, is proceeding normally. Separation due at 25 minutes after launch. The men from Telecom anxiously watching for their satellite.
Right side, you see Pierre Ramard, who is the mission director.
Now we're under 10 kilometers per second here. You mentioned 10 kilometers as the speed necessary, but we're 9.2, now 9.1.
Yes, but now there is the orbital speed. There is no more acceleration. It's the third stage is going along its own orbit. Few seconds.
Acquisition du satellite Italsat par la station Malindi.
Oh, well, we've already had the first acquisition.
Séparation Telecom 2D.
There's the separation. And there's the applause of the Ariane mission.
So now, of course, people of spacecraft are very, very happy. Mission of the launcher is not finished.
The Telecom 2D, now that it's up, antennas will be deployed at about 5 hours after liftoff. And the apogee motor firings, the first one in one liftoff after 1 day, the second plus 3 days, the third and last plus 5 days, solar panels plus 6 days. In orbit, the satellite with the solar panels will measure 22 meters by 7.5 meters by just over 3 meters. So before we go to the speeches, we're going to have, I think, 5 speeches. We'll have Francis Avanzi from Ariane Espace. We'll have Signor Vita from the Italian Telecom Ministry. We'll have Mr. Giuseppe Geraruzzi of Telecom Italia, I believe. Jean-Philippe Vanneau of France Telecom, and Pierre Lamoulin of the French Army, all due to make some speeches. In the meantime, the operational people in the fishbowl shaking hands, congratulating one another. Everybody very happy here. Success of this European launch, flight number 90. We will have a replay of the launch coming up very shortly. As soon as we have that, we'll let you watch those fine pictures again.
So it has been quite a smooth flight, it seems.
No hitches in the countdown, no hitches in positive time, nothing.
Liftoff just at the beginning of the window. And all the parameters used in flight were correct and corresponding to prediction.
And then we'll get word on the inclination and all. We should have that within the hour. Just the last word on Telecom 2D. We're speaking with Pierre Ramard, who said that it had a reduced campaign here. A, B, and C were all 7.5 weeks long, but Telecom 2D was just under 5 weeks because all the payload tests were carried out before the spacecraft came to Kourou on July 11th at the Matre Marconi shop in Toulouse, France.
Yes. So you see people in the Jupiter 2 waiting for the speech.
We're waiting for Francis Avanzi, who is just getting up out of his seat now, I think, inside the fishbowl. He should be making his way out in front of the podium and in front of the crowd here in just a few minutes.
10, 9,
Here's your replay.
8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, top. Allumage. Tous les paramètres bord sont normaux. Décollage. Le satellite Telecom 2D a été acquis par la station de Artsibichuk.
Oh, this is good news.
Décollage.
We have that shot from a second camera, and we should have a couple more. The replay
Perte normale
from
par la station
Toucan,
de
hopefully.
Libreville.
Save that for after the speeches. Well, the speakers are coming in. Here's Francis Avanzi at the podium, microphone in hand, to give the first of the speeches post-launch for flight number 90.
So we're waiting to see Mr. Avanzi, who is standing in Jupiter 2.
He may be waiting for some of the other customers to come out and join him.
Bien, mesdames, messieurs, chers amis d'Ariane, comme vous venez de le
Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends from Ariane, as you've seen, Ariane Espace is glad to have completed the Flight 90 mission. The two passengers on board 44L, that is Italsat F2 and Telecom 2D, are now on their GTO orbit. And now we're ready for the next step, which will be managed by our friends from ESOC and CNES in Toulouse in France, towards their final orbit position. Flight 90, which during all the duration of the campaign was nominal, was one day late, as you know. But during the flight, everything has been going on smoothly, and the first data show that the injection data we have is almost perfect. Flight 90 this evening for Ariane Espace is the 8th flight of the year in 1996, 12th satellite into orbit, and it is also the 19th flight in a period of 18 months, and that confirms that this is a regular line that we have, the space line or transport line for Ariane. And Ariane 5 will be the newcomer later on in the foreseeable future. I would like to thank Telecom Italia and the Italian Space Agency, together with Alenia Spazio, together with the Italsat F2, they've been able to increase their network with the Ka band, and they have used the EMS payload, European Mobile Systems. I would like to thank France Telecom as well as the DGA, together with Marconi Space and Alcatel, which together with Telecom 2T will increase their fleet to 4 satellites. That is a wonderful capacity for telecommunications.
Fin de chronologie vol 90. Les moyens sont remis à la disposition des adjoints.
Will be as an addition to the Syracuse facilities we have for the Army. Therefore, on behalf of all the Ariane Espace team, I would like to thank you again for trusting us, and I would like to tell you again that we are glad to serve you. Thank you also for all the operational staff and the industrial staff here in Kourou, but also in Europe, and thank you to all of you who've shared this great and major event this evening from Kourou, but also from Paris, from Évry, Roma, Washington and Tokyo. I would like to also pay tribute to our customers and friends, because they have contributed to the launch date, because they were on the charter flight, and on that flight the part we needed for the launch vehicle was present. Mr. Vita is the Undersecretary of State in the Ministry of Telecommunications and Post Office.
Thank you. First of all, I wish to thank our French friends for the hospitality they offered me and the occasion they gave me to check the perfect organization and the great technological value of this Kourou base. I wish to dedicate a special thanks to the Italian Space Agency and to all national companies, manager and personnel, Alenia Spazio, Telecom Italia, Nuova Telespazio, which contributed to the realization of Italsat, as well as to His Excellence, the Ambassador in Brazil, Mr. Oliviero Rossi, who was so kind to be present to this event. And Jean-Bernard Mérimée, Ambassador of France in Italy, he is in Italy in this moment, in connection with us. Italsat F2 is really a very big chance provided to the national technological development to build space units and a great opportunity to implement all the new services linked to the telecommunication systems. I have to insist on this opportunity, which will better improve our way of life, our knowledge, our work. This communication satellite will be used to improve the telephony connections and multimedia application as tele-education, telemedicine, telework, and mobile services and internet. At present, the Italian government is engaged with a special review of whole communication system, and Italsat F2 represents a very important step towards the creation of a national communication system to be totally integrated into the future European information society. As a matter of fact, Italsat F2 has the advantage to be included into the European project of advanced communications, and moreover, it is a flexible tool available for any national operator. I wish a great success for all the Italian companies. And I like to congratulate them for the completion Italsat F2. Aggiungo infine, per il collegamento in Italia, un saluto ai tantissimi ospiti che in questo momento a Roma, nella sede di Alenia Spazio, stanno assistendo a questo evento. Un evento straordinario per tutti noi. Voglio salutare l'onorevole Guerzoni, sottosegretario al Ministero della Pubblica Istruzione e della Ricerca Scientifica, gli altri esponenti del governo italiano presenti, De Giulio, Rodotà, ne cito alcuni, non li vedo, ne cito alcuni, tutti i presenti, insomma, compresi gli esponenti di quelle ditte che hanno fatto in modo che Italsat F2 potesse trovare stasera questo splendido inizio. E permettetemi infine, in italiano, ognuno di noi ha la sua lingua, di ringraziare ancora una volta tutti voi, perché per chi è stato, del mio caso, per la prima volta qui a Kourou ad assistere a un evento di questo tipo, assicuro un'emozione straordinaria che certamente non dimenticherò. Grazie.
Monsieur Gérard Duzzi, Executive Vice President Network de Telecom Italia.
Merci. Bonsoir à toutes les autorités, tous les invités, tous les
all
amis
of
et
you, to all the
collègues
authorities,
à
to
Rome.
all the friends also gathered in Roma.
Italia a
This evening, Telecom Italia has got 2 satellites in space. And I can tell you that this is a major event for Telecom Italia.
Le lancement a été parfait.
The launch has been perfect. The organization was perfect as well, and I would like to thank all the people who participated. I would like also to thank Mr. Avanzi, who's been in charge of all the operations. Now the Italsat F2 satellite has been placed into orbit, and we're very glad, we are proud that everything's been going on smoothly. That is very important for us. Having a satellite in space is a major opportunity for telecommunications in general. Again, I would like to thank all of you, but also I would like to thank all those in charge of the organization. I would like to thank all the participants. I would like to pay tribute to the European Space Agency, to the Italian Space Agency in particular, and I would like to thank Ariane once again. Thank you to you all.
Maintenant, pour la partie française, je voudrais appeler M. Vanneau, qui est directeur des réseaux et services
in charge
internationaux.
of networks and international services for France Telecom. Good evening. Just like for Telecom Italia, France Telecom is fully satisfied with the launch, which took place really in a nominal way, if I may say so, and in time. We would like to warmly thank Ariane for the quality of the launch. Ariane had already launched our first 3 satellites of the first generation. That's the conclusion with our 4th satellite from the 2nd generation. As you know, Telecom 2D is the completion of our satellite program. Thanks to that satellite, we'll be able to guarantee and sustain our connections between France and the overseas department. It will also be an opportunity for us to have a commercial policy using satellites and providing services for companies and for users. That was just the first step. We'll have to do much more than that. For instance, to integrate Telecom 2D in the whole network of international networks. But that's just the beginning, and I would like to once again...
Mr.
Lamoulaine, who's the general engineer for the armament from the DGA, Direction Générale de l'Armement. Everybody's been thanking everybody this evening, so it's a bit difficult for me, but once again I would like to thank you all. Thank you for the Centre Spatial Guyanais, the Space Center in Guyana. Thank you to Ariane. It was the last satellite for us in terms of communication. We will have other military communications